Welcome everyone and happy Monday. Today is Monday, the 27th of April, and this is our next edition of Daily Connections. Thank you so much for making time to join us today and to join in the discussion and to have a little fun with this conversation. The conversation we're actually going to talk about today is a little bit more serious, maybe a little bit more somber than some of the ones we've talked about, but definitely in line with our continued intent to provide useful content during this time of disrupted COVID-19, the situations that we're all facing, and trying to provide useful content that you can apply and use and do something with right away. And on Friday of this past week, I had shared some ideas about trying something novel and doing something different, just because that was top of mind for me. And it was over the weekend that I heard conversation after conversation from others, family and friends and colleagues, that made me realize how timely that really was, thinking of something different. So today's topic is what we call cabin fever or being stir crazy. As we think about this, what's going on with cabin fever? Well, many of us have been sort of isolated and locked into our spaces, feeling like we're set apart from everyone else, and some of us by ourselves and some with groups of people. But I keep hearing people talking about being stir crazy or having this cabin fever. And so I started doing some looking into it and what some of the indications are and what some of the outputs are and things that we need to talk about. And it turns out that cabin fever is not a diagnosable disease, right? You can't go to the hospital with cabin fever. But it is, it's definitely real, and a lot of us are feeling it right now. The phrase stir crazy, which is kind of another word for cabin fever. I'm going stir crazy, right? I can't move. It actually, that was first used, random trivia that of course you want to know, was first used in London in the early 1900s. There was a prison in the London area called Store, and it was abbreviated as STIR. And so people who'd spent too much time sort of locked in their cells at that prison were referred to as stir crazy. So that's where the phrase came from. But cabin fever, and which I'm going to use the word cabin fever because it seems more uplifting. It seems like a better word for our current era. Cabin fever, the definition from Webster is it's extreme irritability and restlessness from living in isolation or in a confined indoor area for a prolonged time. Well, I'm not sure if you've looked at your calendars, but many of us have been in a confined indoor area for a prolonged time at this point. And so we're starting to see behaviors that are really, really different. And I started to do some more research into this and some more understanding as to what's going on. And it turns out that it can take different forms. What does it look like, this cabin fever? It can take some different forms. It can be listlessness or boredom, excessive fatigue. It can, like a lack of appetite or interest in anything, and an overwhelming tired. It can also manifest itself as suspicion. So you spend so much time enclosed in this space or surrounded by these same walls, you become suspicious of anything outside those four walls. It can manifest itself as fear or fear of things outside the cabin. It can manifest itself, so not just irritability, but extreme irritability to like lashing out. And some of the cases that I read included violence and really hostile actions, extreme frustration. It can be an inability to focus. This cabin fever, what happens, some people get a little punchy. You've heard people describe themselves or others as punchy. The idea with this cabin fever is when you get into a confined space and you spend a whole lot of time in the same space, you start to behave differently. And I think it's something that we need to be aware of. Generally, why is this a problem, right? So you get a little cabin fever. We all get that a little bit in the wintertime, right? It's why spring, especially here in Iowa, that first February day when out of the blue, all of a sudden it's like 68 degrees and everybody goes outside and then, probably snows the next day. But we have that release of the cabin fever because the winter gets so long. But generally, cabin fever can be problematic because one of the things that it does is it can impair your decision making. So when you are making decisions about what is the right thing to do next, or what would be good for you, or what would be healthy, or what would be a good decision for your career, or for your business, or for your colleagues, or your team member, or to eat at your next meal, cabin fever can impair your decision making because you're starting to be suspicious of things on the outside. You're unable to focus. You're listless or bored or not interested in things. So it can adversely impact your decision making. One of the other things we know about how it can be problematic is, especially here during COVID COVID-19, I think it is, there were some indications that it's exacerbated by following the exact same routine. So especially when you're in small groups, like by yourself in pure isolation, or in groups where it's the same group of people following the exact same routine every day, this makes your cabin fever even greater. And one of the things that I believe is problematic about that for us right now is because many of us are in these places where we're sort of confined with other family members trying to establish routine. So we've got to be careful to make sure that that routine is not so rigid and so inflexible that it creates this cabin fever sense. The other thing about it is that extreme irritability, that extreme frustration that can turn into violence. I mean, that can create damaged relationships, that can create harm. And especially when small groups of people are confined together in family members. I'm thinking of the families together. If we're all experiencing cabin fever and we're not dealing with it and we're not dealing with each other with grace, we run the risk of really damaging our relationships and our family structure. So what do you do about it? Okay, so that sounds kind of dark. I didn't know cabin fever was so serious. Well, it can be. And I think there are some specific things that you can do about it. And without even realizing how timely it was, the idea on Friday where we were sharing something novel, something different that you were going to do this weekend, it's actually one of the best things that you can do for cabin fever is to pick something different. Now, if your ability to make decisions is impaired because you're struggling from cabin fever, you're going to want to have someone else to help you. One of the things they talk about, especially in the long winter months in northern areas, cabin fever causes you to take unnecessary risks, and it causes you to do things that are kind of adrenaline seeking, which might not be safe and can be harmful. So as you're getting this idea to do something new and novel, you want to make sure that you're thinking of something that is new and novel and a safe variation to your routine. So change the scenery a little bit. If you've been working and you've got a family member who sits on the edge of a bed in a bedroom somewhere, and that's their working space for those 8 hours of workday, and you've got someone else who's in the kitchen and someone else who's in the downstairs den, or someone in another part, shake it up, change locations. Try being in different spaces to see if that change of scenery helps a little bit. Change the routine a little bit. If you have been doing your walk in the afternoon at 4:30, shake it up. Try a morning walk instead. Or if you've been doing a morning exercise routine, try an afternoon or an evening. Shake it up. Do some variety there. For sure, one of the best things to do for cabin fever is get fresh air. So if you have the ability to step outside your home, on your back deck, on your front porch, take a chair to the front yard. If you can't do any of these things, but you can at least open your window, then open your window and get that fresh air that way. Definitely fresh air is one of the best things to alleviate the symptoms of cabin fever. Focus on something new. So as you're trying something new or novel or different, focus on other people, right? Think of a way to help people. Find a new member of your family network or your friend network that you can reach out to in a different way. Focus on something like learning a new skill or growing in some particular discipline or area, or improving in some way, some material self-improvement. If you bring a group of people together, like the people who live in the house with you, you can all then experience kind of the growth that comes from that. So some of those tips are things that you can do to help yourself. So we talked about what does it look like? Why is it a problem? We talked about what you can do about it. What about if you see a friend or a family member who is struggling with this? One of the things I invite you to do for sure is to recognize the symptoms, right? Recognize that they may be experiencing cabin fever. I had a call that was a little bit funny, but a little bit serious from a dear friend, which she was talking about her husband and saying he was just doing some really bizarre things that didn't make any sense for his usual behavior. And he's someone that I've known for a really long time. And so we sort of chuckled about it and then got to talking about the reality that he needs a change in his routine. He was just being punchy and out of character because the cabin fever had set in. He hadn't left the house since March 16th, I think was the last time he had been out his front door. And so getting him to go outside, go out the front door. If you stay inside, certainly we need to practice our social distancing. Certainly we need to continue to be safe. If you're going in public spaces, you need to maintain that interval of feet, whether it's 6 feet or 12 feet or 23 feet, whatever it is the number that you want to use. Make sure you're wearing masks and protecting yourself and not getting close to other people. But my goodness, get some fresh air. Get outside, especially in that spring air. If we hide behind or are tucked away in our houses, it's creating a fear that is causing the outside to be even more fearful than it was. So recognize that symptom among your family members and talk to them about it. One of the things that I would say above all else is to practice some compassion and some grace. If you've got people who are just off the handle irritated at you, do something out of character, snap in a way that's not customary for them, or are strangely irritable or strangely listless, give them a little grace, give them a little compassion. Don't judge for this. This is not something worth judging about. This is something worth helping through and just loving them through it. Offer them something new. If you see that someone's going through this, offer to, one of the things that we're going to do in our neighborhood is we did a little bit of cleaning out and found some outdoor toys that might be interesting to kids who are younger than our kids. And we're going to hold an outdoor toy sale, and it's a free sale. It's not a sale so much as a come and pick it up. And so we'll spread them all out and let the kids come over. And these toys are not fantastic, right? But they'll be new to the people who don't have them yet, right? It's something new and something novel. Shake it up a little bit. Give them a diversion during the day if you can. Offer that something new. And then I think if you know of someone who's wrestling with cabin fever right now, help them through decision making. If you see that they're trying to, here's where my heart's going out right now. We've got a bunch of seniors and juniors in high school who are making decisions, and seniors in college who are making decisions about what's next for them, right? Choosing their college for next year, or deciding whether to go or not go, or deciding what they want to do with the next year of their lives. And when we've been surrounded and sort of locked into our spaces for this period of weeks, it's possible that their judgment is a bit impaired, right? That they're maybe making decisions to stay closer to home than they might have already decided, or maybe they're making decisions or they're struggling trying to decide what the right thing is to do, or they're lashing out at someone nearby, and so then making a reaction to go as far away from that person as they possibly can, right? And so these are not great decisions. Those are decisions based on reactions. So see what you can do to help them through their decision making. Be a listening ear, ask them probing questions, engage them in conversation. And if there's any way to do that while taking a walk in the fresh air, man, that would be best for everybody. So those are some ideas. We're thinking about cabin fever is the topic of the day. My name is Sinika Waugh. I think I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. I am with Your Clear Next Step, and these daily connections are part of our ongoing commitment to help people have better days at work so that we can have better evenings and better weekends, and donate our discretionary time back to building better communities.